no one perfect way to paint a picture or to write a song. Indeed, because we and our world exist in a constant state of change, nothing can ever be said to be perfect. Nothing is ever complete. Nothing is ever finished. This idea is at the heart of wabi-sabi, a Japanese aesthetic concept that embraces imperfection, typically featuring an intentional crack, a rustic particularity. Similarly, a deliberate error or asymmetry is often applied in intricate Islamic geometric designs on the grounds that only God is perfect. The rage on this page is my own reenactment of a picture drawn by my then 7-year-old daughter. Regretfully, the necessary permission for display of the original work was not granted by the artist. Forget it, Mum. Also, she'd thrown it in the bin. This picture is hated by the artist, who is now no longer an artist. When I saw my daughter's picture, I realised how very much I have failed at this point to pass on the wisdom of the great Japanese and Islamic artistic traditions. Veggies were pretty good with teeth brushing, but that complete Zen self-acceptance, we're still working on that. The intensity of her frustration and self-criticism also brought back to me my earlier self. I began my career as a musician with a very similar mindset, recording 4 albums and not releasing them. They don't even seem that bad to me now. But at the time, my inner critical pit bull was so rabid, even listening back to the tracks was excruciating. And the idea of putting it out to the listening public seemed a sure way to a quick death. I suffered what psychologists call maladaptive perfectionism, in which one takes healthy conscientiousness, the natural drive to develop, to work hard to make good work, and twists it into a debilitating neurosis. The ingredients are a toxic blend of lack of basic self-esteem, fear of failure, and the result is that one's productivity is strangled by vague, fuzzy, unrealistic, and yet disastrous imaginings. Being a maladaptive perfectionist was a real lousy gig, and happily I've lived my way over time into a more forgiving, fruitful and fun, creative workflow, more wabi-sabi. I'm going to share 3 principles I lean on in my work as a songwriter that help me make friends with imperfection and that I hope I can pass to my daughter before she throws away more great masterpieces. The first principle: messing up does not necessarily kill you. I learnt this perhaps for the first time when I smashed up my ex-boyfriend's dad's car, absolutely, completely, in an accident that was entirely my fault. The other driver was covered in bright blue house paint he'd been carrying in the back seat. He was not too happy with me, nor the police at the scene, nor my ex's dad, whose car was no longer a car. I really was a social disgrace. And in my life ledger as a goody two-shoes, this was the worst mark ever. Nevertheless, the next morning I woke up. The sun had risen before me, and life did more or less go on. Principle 2, don't look down. We need to create situations in which we're not gazing into the abyss, wondering how deep and dark that pit of failure may be, but keeping our eyes on the work. I make myself do this regularly in a radio segment called Shaken Not Rehearsed, writing a bespoke song in an hour themed on ideas called in by listeners at the start of the show. With my back to the wall, all the exits sealed, and 100,000 listeners waiting for the song, I've not yet failed to deliver something. Not every song is great, but the deadline gives me permission to unitask. No housework, no snacks, phone calls, Facebook, and the inner critical pit bull is well and truly muzzled by the dire survival necessity to produce something. So because I make myself do this ridiculous thing, I end up with more songs written. When I do hit the dirt, the song's not so great, maybe, or maybe the song is great, but I mess it up in the delivery because my shorthand scribbles look like compost. I refer myself back to principle 1, check my pulse, yep, she's still there, and just keep going. Ultimately, I feel any egg on my face, even in a public place, is a fair trade for getting more songs in the bag overall and just being in the game, getting to have a life in music. Principle 3, angels don't make pasta. This third principle was brought home to me recently when I visited this cemetery in Italy on the Aeolian island of Salina, possibly the most beautiful resting place ever, overlooking the Tyrrhenian Sea in the company of exquisitely rendered marble angels. And then there was something so shocking and fantastic. Someone thought, no, I'm going to render Nonna as she actually was. Pointy nose, double chin, features chiselled by life's actual vicissitudes rather than an airbrush. The uncompromising isness of this Nonna touched me. She was not unlike my own Nonna. I could almost smell the pasta. And her particularity made her so much more powerful to me than all the other idealised fantasies flying around the tombstones. Those angels might be perfect, but they never fed anyone a steaming bowl of pasta. Maladaptive perfectionists measure their work and worth against an ideal that is almost always unrealistic and that exists only in the abstract. And they go very hungry in the process. I hope I can teach my daughter to loosen up on the inner pit bull sitting in judgment of her work. Not to be shackled to an ideal of beauty, of perfection of size or colour or shape or sound, and instead to accept and embrace the actual humble isness of the here and now. This song is about a gift from a mother to a daughter, and it's an unfinished, imperfect gift, just some chords without words that she's found along her way, a sound that she likes, a feeling that she wants to pass on and that feels worth passing on, unfinished and imperfect as it is. My darling, I give to you these chords, chords without words. They are yours, picked up off the ground. From the day I found them, they have
together. They're not clever, but they're true. Chords without words, flight without a bird, heart without nerve, fourth without a third. Chords without words, shell without a pearl, love's vow unheard, a babe waiting for its birth. My darling, these sounds can be your swords, and they'll serve you well. First they must be burnished in the chilling fires of hell. If you hold them tight through the dark and lonesome night, you will find them, name them, and baptize them. Chords without words, flight without a bird, heart without nerve, fourth without a third. Chords without words, shell without a pearl, love's vow